welcome everyone. Welcome to the Stanford Graduate School of Business Joint and Dual Degree webinar. We're so happy to have you here today. We're going to be spending the next 45 minutes or so together to hopefully answer your questions about Stanford's joint degree and dual degree programs. So just a few fun facts about the Stanford program to sort of ground us today. While we get settled and start a little bit about just learning about the school itself, we're going to launch a poll because we're really curious in hearing from you. And we'd love to know when you're thinking about applying to business school. That can certainly help us frame our conversation today, whether you're thinking about applying this year or maybe a couple of years from now. So keep a lookout for a poll that will be launching soon. And while we do that, I'm going to introduce you to the Stanford Graduate School of Business program. So one of the really unique elements of the educational experience here is that you're not only going to get a world-class business education through the MBA program, but you also have access to all of the leading schools across Stanford's campus. So approximately 80% of our MBA students will actually choose to take at least one of their electives somewhere else across Stanford's campus during their time here. But as many as 1 in 5 are actually pursuing a joint or a dual degree during their time here. And that's going to be the focus of our conversation today. So there are a few distinctions between what constitutes a joint degree and a dual degree. And we're fortunate to have our joint and dual degree advisor, Jennifer, on our call today. So for those of you who have any questions about some of those details and the logistics and the tactical elements of the degree, we'll call on Jennifer to answer some of those. But we really want to spend the time with our students and alumni who have actually gone through these programs and who can speak to their personal experiences. So we've just launched the poll here, and we'd love if you could just take a moment to let us know when you're planning to start your MBA experience. That will be really helpful for us as we continue our conversation today. I shared a brief introduction to our program. Next, we're going to turn things over and meet our panelists. I'm going to kick us off with a few questions to get us started, but really we want to utilize the time today to hear from you and hear your questions. So at any time, feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box, and we will try to get to as many as possible in our time together today. For those of you who may not have immediate questions, you're just curious, we have turned on the upvoting feature. So if you see a question in the box and you're also interested in hearing the answer, go ahead and upvote that, because the more upvotes we see, the more likely we are to be able to get to that question today. All right. So with that, I'd love to introduce you to our alumni panel. We are so fortunate to be joined by some alumni now, although I knew many of them as students, who have participated in a few of our different joint and dual study programs. So what I'd love to do to kick us off is actually turn things over to each of you to just introduce yourself by name, a little bit about what you were doing before school and the joint degree program you pursued. And then I'm going to go into a couple of questions to get us started.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm very happy to be here. My name is Juan Manuel, and I am currently living in Mexico City. I joined the GSB in 2014, and I did consulting before the GSB. I graduated in 2016, and I went back to consulting for 2 years, but with the goal that one day I will be part of the education world. So after 2 years in consulting, I came back to Mexico, and I am currently the CEO, Executive Director of Enseña por México, Teach for Mexico. And I love my job, and the dual degree really prepared me for the job that I currently have.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Ida, how about yourself?
Sure thing. Thank you, Christine. Hi, my name is Ida Hempel. I'm calling in from San Francisco right now, and I graduated from the GSB in 2019. Although I guess I should caveat that I actually finished the EIPER program, which is the master's program in environment and resources, sort of early 2020 to start 2.5 years at Stanford, which was great. So I generation investment in San Francisco. We are an investment manager focused on sustainable investing. I sort of focus on our climate investments, both in growth equity and in real assets. And before GSB, I was in management consulting at the Boston Consulting Group. Great to be with all of you today.
Thank you, Ida. Sorry for mispronouncing your name there. David, how about yourself? You were somebody who did a joint study with another school. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, hey everyone, David Demares calling in from Atlanta, Georgia. I heard one other person from Atlanta, which is awesome. I actually had a non-traditional background before GSB, but you'll hear that from a lot of GSBers. I started out after college, took a few years as a professional triathlete, and then worked in higher education for a number of years for Yale University, my alma mater. And after that, decided to go back to school. And so I did the GSB and dual degree with Harvard Kennedy School. So like Christine was saying earlier, doing an MBA at GSB allows you to do other dual and joint degrees at Stanford, but also other places too, which is pretty incredible, I thought, clearly, because that's the route I ended up choosing. Ended up doing 2 summer internships. One of them was in consulting at BCG, but then ended up going into private equity, portfolio company management afterwards, and have been doing that ever since.
Thank you, David. And Jennifer, while not an official alumni panelist, you are still very much an important part of our conversation today. Can you tell the folks joining us a little bit about your role and how you support our joint and dual degree students?
Absolutely. Thank you everyone for joining. My name is Jennifer, and I am the main point of contact at the GSB for current students that are pursuing a joint or dual degree. So degree requirements are a little bit different when you pursue the MBA along with another degree, and I am essentially your dedicated academic advisor to guide you through those differences and help you finish on schedule.
Excellent. Thank you, Jennifer, and thanks to our panelists. And thank you to all the guests at home. Some of the questions are already starting to come in. I'm going to kick us off with one question, and then we're going to dive into some of these others. So for each of our panelists, you selected very different joint degree programs to pursue. Can each of you describe a little bit about your decision for pursuing that second degree and what made you interested in the program that you did choose?
I can start, but I don't want to be the one that predicts the order, but I'll start this time. I knew that I wanted to work in education the long term. So, and I have worked in business consulting for the 3.5 years before joining the GSB. And I had started a nonprofit program in education, but I had never actually been trained with theory, pedagogy, all the knowledge that you require to really work in education. So what really guided my decision was that my long-term goal was inspired by the idea that I wanted to be in the education field and I needed the knowledge, the technical knowledge. So that was the main idea, that I wanted to complement that. But this is not the question, but there is a personal story behind why I wanted to do education. So I'll give you a brief. My mother doesn't know how to read and write. I was able to go to college and pursue many, many goals. And that really always stayed in my mind. And I thought that I needed to do something for the world. And that's why I wanted to work in education. And I currently am doing that, supporting teachers in Mexico. And I love it, but that was the idea. So the passion that I have for education and the technical need that I had to work in the field.
Fantastic.
I'm happy to go next, although we don't know, again, as Juan says, we don't know also have the heat of this order. So I was pretty dead set on doing some kind of joint MBA program. Having come from management consulting, I did that for 2 years. I actually felt like it did actually give me a pretty good sort of broad-based business skill set. I knew there were certain areas where I wanted to go deeper. I had a notion that I might want to explore investing. So I wanted to explore that through business school. And I also wanted a bit of the soft skills development, but I also was really interested in having a career doing something around tackling environmental and climate challenges through the private sector. And so I was really interested in MBA programs that had that, and Stanford is one of the few, and has a really terrific offering. So it was actually really important to me to do something like EIPR. And I think a sort of similar answer to Juan's, just transposed to the climate arena. I really wanted a place where it was super interdisciplinary. Stanford, we talk a lot about across the street courses. It was so important to me to have that flexibility. I spent a lot of time across the street. Actually, I really loved having that flexibility. And Stanford has so many different schools, and you can really sort of mix and match. And EIPR in particular, climate is a really interdisciplinary challenge that requires policy and understanding of other ecosystem benefits and energy and like food systems. There's a bunch there. And I actually used my IPER program to take a few courses in each thing while also acquiring a little bit more sort of technical and engineering depth. So just like name things, I took like a land use and agriculture course, like battery chemistry. So things that really informed my ability to be an investor in the space after the program. I think the other thing that's worth mentioning is the IPER program, it has folks who are also JDs in the program, and I think PhDs as well, but there's a really great MBA cohort. I'm not sure what the current cohort size is, but like mine was like from 25 to 30. You are super integrated to your overall MBA class, but that cohort like winds up being this really great network for you as you all sort of move through your careers. And the IPER alumni base is quite incredible as well. So it's a nice little sub network within your broader business school network of people who are exploring sort of the environmental business trajectory, but taking their own sort of angles to it.
Yeah, and for me personally, I knew I wanted to do an MBA because I didn't have those hard skills that the people in iBanking and consulting had. And, I felt like I wanted to really get those hard skills, but also get onto a career path where I could try out something like consulting. And GSB, the MBA was perfect for that and more. But longer term, that was sort of my short term, first few years goal. Longer term, I knew I wanted a career that intersected with nonprofit or public sector. And, something I didn't expect, was that cohort you get, those of us that we're going back and forth from Boston to Palo Alto, and you do get this incredible community of people who are very passionate about similar things as you, which you can already find within, any GSB cohort, but it's extra time with them and extra, a little bit of extra bonding because you have that shared experience and that extra year together. And that's something that was really important to me. And that still is, one of my primary groups of friends that I keep in touch with even now.
Great, thank you, David. This next question is for Jennifer from Sky, wondering what are the trade-offs between doing a dual and joint degree or a singular degree? For example, do you have less choices in the business electives that you take? So I know we have a little information on our website, but knowing all the benefits, and we'll continue to hear about the benefits of the joint and dual degree programs today, can you also describe what some of the trade-offs are?
Sure. And I actually talk about benefits and trade-offs all the time with students, but I will not talk about benefits now because I think the students can talk about that. Sorry, the alum. I would say the trade-offs for pursuing a joint or dual degree is going to be time. When you pursue an additional degree from an MBA, it means you're doing an entire additional set of requirements. So you're going to have less time to take extra classes, especially if you're trying to finish in the shortest amount of time as possible. So the trade-offs are going to be very much about time. A student doing a single MBA might be able to join 4 or 5 clubs, and as a joint student, you might need to focus on 1 or 2. And same goes for electives. A lot of students might be able to go a little bit somewhat random with electives that they choose outside the GSB, but a joint degree student, all of those non-GSB electives are for the most part going to be for that second degree. So a lot of it really comes down to time and prioritizing what is going to be the most important thing to you as you go through this educational experience and making decisions based on that.
Thanks, Jennifer. Speaking of time, Jesse had a question for our panelists. How did you manage your time? So when you were juggling and balancing multiple degrees, can you talk a little bit about how you prioritized the things that were important to you during your time in the program? And Ida, maybe we'll start with you. We'll mix up the order a little bit.
Sure, happy to. Well, it's a great question. So personally, so I actually came in, not to be overly structured about this, but like I did come into the GSB with like a set of hypotheses, right? Like a few things I wanted to test out. I was like, do I want to be an operator at a company? Do I want to try investing? And like, do I want to go into climate? Do I want to do like energy, mobility, or buildings? Like I had like a bunch of questions. And so I kind of like mapped out like how I thought I might answer each question. And you like this unfolded very organically in the end. And part of this is me imposing order on my experience in retrospect. But I think you can kind of do that to help like make sure that you're getting like the right mix of things over time. So you can say like, well, I don't need to do all the clubs. Like maybe if I'm, trying to decide whether I want to go this direction or that direction, I can try out one through a club and I like figure out the other one through coursework without, doing everything under the sun that seems kind of pertinent. I will also add that I did have the benefit of taking 2 quarters. I think someone in the chat asked about how long to do EIPER. I think it pretty commonly, the bulk of people take 1 to 2 quarters past the second year. That's the most normal thing. Folks actually do it in 2 years. This is like relatively aggressive. I think as Jennifer was saying, like I think if you do it in 2, the whole thing in 2 years, completely feasible. You will have to trade off extracurriculars or something. If you add 1 to 2 more quarters, I think you actually make no trade-offs. Like you can have a very comfy 2 years with lots of like extra time in the third year. And then you can even stretch to 3 quarters, which might be if you're like working on your company concept and you can like take advantage of like all the other resources that Stanford has to help you build that concept. So anyways, that's my 2 cents on sort of the timing thing. I actually faced the pressure less because I did take those 2 quarters and purposefully wanted to stay on campus a little bit longer.
Yeah, and I'll say for me, one of the great privileges of adding another year and doing another year at HKS is you actually have way more time. I spent my first year at HKS and got to do exactly what Ida was saying, is test out things, impact investing. Is that something I want to do with my career? I, helped run a conference on it, learned a lot about it, decided it wasn't for me, moved on to something else and was able to test a lot of that even before I arrived on GSB campus. And you get 2 different summers to test some things out. I worked for a governor's office of Colorado for 1 summer, got that public sector itch. I'd always wanted to try out state government. And then I got to do management consulting, something else I'd always wanted to try out. And so you do get a little less time at each school, but overall, in terms of your overall personal development, it is a little comfier and you get a little more time to do that development. Which was super nice.
In my case, I got to do both in 2 years. I think the education degree is more feasible because actually the education degree by itself is 1 year. So I noticed that actually for me, there were not many trade-offs because many of the education requirements can be fulfilled by classes at the business school. And maybe I didn't consider them trade-offs because I was so interested in education that even if I didn't do the dual degree, I was probably gonna take those kind of classes at the GSB. So that really helped me. Something that really helped me was my personal check all the time. My What Matters the Most to Me essay was kind of my Bible for the GSB. It was related to education, and anytime I wanted to question myself if I was sacrificing something, I went back to that essay and say, am I aligning with what matters the most to me or not? And if the answer was yes, I needed to do that thing. If the answer was no, I didn't do it. And I prepare you, like the GSB has so many resources that I think no matter if you even just do 1 degree, you always feel that you're gonna be leaving something behind. So I'm just a data point, but something that really helped me was having those clear, like similar to Ida, what are the things that I want to test out while I'm at the GSB? And that is going to guide you throughout the 2 years or 2.5 if you decide to do a dual degree.
Thank you. So David, I'm going to turn the next question over to you, but I'm going to also broaden it a little bit just as a point of information for everyone on the call. So David pursued the MBA with Stanford and the degree at HKS. We do also have some additional joint study opportunities with the Princeton School of Jennifer, what's the latest name? Is it the International Affairs program these days? Public Policy and International Affairs?
Princeton School of Public and International Affairs.
That one. And also the Johns Hopkins School of Public Affairs and help me out again.
Advanced International Studies.
That one. So we do have a couple of other joint studies where you can be pursuing opportunities at Stanford and with some public policy programs on the East Coast. And I'm seeing a lot of questions in the Q&A, no surprise, about the logistics of doing that. So actually 2-part question, one for Jennifer and then one for David. So Jennifer, I know that students who are pursuing these paths actually have a couple of options in terms of where to start their studies. David referenced that earlier. So you can choose between starting at one or the other. So could you talk a little bit about how that works? And then the question for David is, how did you personally manage the logistics of relocating your studies across the country a couple of times?
Sure. So the public policy options are largely, there's a public policy program at Stanford, which is a joint degree, and there's also the Harvard Kennedy School, Johns Hopkins, and Princeton options. For the external programs, you can choose to either start at the other institution or start at the GSB. A lot of those decisions can be personal. For HKS, it's attached to if you're doing the Master of Public Policy versus a Master of Policy Analysis, because that has to do with the curriculum at HKS. So there are some, I guess, limitations if you're interested specifically in the MPP and in terms of what order you pursue your studies. But generally speaking, you do move back and forth across the country a couple of times to pursue these dual study options. And, you know, as I said, the reasons for starting at one versus the other can be varied. Some students apply to HKS while they are in their MBA 1 year, and some students apply to the GSB when they're in their first year at HKS. So some of it can be circumstantial as well. Did that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, and I think people have great experiences doing either. It sort of depends on when you apply and when you get in and what your options are. I would say generally thinking about what type of job you want to do afterwards. If you want to do a business-like job afterwards, like consulting, generally it's easier to finish at business school. If you wanted to do a public sector thing, then it's generally easier to finish at HKS. You can do it either way, but it's a little bit easier if you're trying to do that.
Great, thank you. I'm going to take one question real quick. Somebody was asking, if you apply to both programs, the MBA and another program, are you automatically enrolled in both, or do you still get to decide if you want to pursue one and not the other? And the answer is yes. So within our MBA application, there are 3 programs here at Stanford that you can use the MBA application to apply to. That's the Master's in Education, the Environment and Resources degree, and the Stanford MPP. All of the other programs at Stanford will require you to apply to those other programs separately, as well as any of the external partner institutions as well. You'd be applying separately, and the admissions processes are completely separate. They are not, the decisions are not made together. But ultimately, if you're admitted to both, you will have the options there. All right, turning things back over to our panelists. Some folks are wondering if you found that the double degree, the 2 degrees, did ultimately help you accomplish some of the career goals that you had set out for yourself. Did you find that the additional degree and the resources and academic exposure you got allowed you to accomplish some of the goals that you had set out for yourself?
Yeah, well, I mean, the MBA clearly, I mean, there's 0 chance I could be doing what I'm doing without the MBA, right? Just everything I do every day is related to that. But the dual degree specifically, for many of us that do it, and I guess I'll just speak to myself, there's a short-term and a long-term component to how you think about your career. And for many of us, it's thinking about, well, I'm only going to go back to school once. What do I want to get out of that time back at school? I'm probably not going to go back for another master's in another 5 years, right? And so it's like, you know, at some point in my career, if I want to re-engage, how am I going to set myself up to re-enter the public sector down the road, even if that's not what I'm doing short term? So for myself, you know, part of my, you know, career plan, you know, so far is wanting to do that later in my career. Have not gone back to private to the public sector or nonprofit yet, but you know, definitely excited to do that at some point.
Yeah, I think for me, EIPER, like what has been like really integral to my current professional experience. Would I absolutely have had to do EIPER to get my current role? Like, hard to say what the counterfactual is. I do think that it differentiated me. I think quite like lots of folks are interested in kind of like venture investing or impact investing. And I think like the fact that I was so homed in on environmental themes and then to boot had the EIPER degree was a huge differentiator for me in that process. And it also just gave me more time to explore like the space that I'm interested in is so broad. It's like all sectors. And I also had to figure out like what asset class did I want to do? Like, did I want to do like timberland assets or something? And it just gave me that time to be really thoughtful about it and to find the right fit. And yeah, I feel like maybe I could have gotten there just having done GSB. I think I've gone a lot further having done EIPR. And I'll also say I'm just much more effective in my role having done EIPR, because through EIPR, like as I mentioned earlier, like just I think I bring a bit more like technical depth because of the program. And I also just met so many folks through not just because I was like across the street part of the time, but actually specifically through the GSB EIPR program. Like that community has such deep roots across the climate investing community and in climate tech. Like so many founders of interesting climate tech companies are often EIPR related. And so I think it's actually just made me better at my job. So that's kind of my answer.
For me, it's definitely yes. And I will acknowledge that I was very naive when I first started the education degree, thinking that I knew everything that I needed to know in education. But I realized that I was coming with a very private sector perspective. So spending time with people that had actually been teachers for many years, academics, gave me like a perspective that you require in education to be very critical. I mean, and I don't assume this is all the cases for business, but the main predictor of success in a business is the profit. In education, it cannot be the profit. There are many things that surrounds the student success. So like going to the GSB and the education degree, it really prepared me to that. And in addition to that, gave me credibility. I realized that when I present myself just as a former MBA student in the education sector, people are like, are you trying to make money out of our poor students, especially working in a nonprofit? And I'm like, no. When I mentioned that I study education, that I really care for the learning, for the success, the outcomes, I definitely gained that credibility that is required. And even with my team, like I have realized that they come to me actually when they need research and knowledge to prove something that we're doing. Like, for example, just today, one of my workers was like, Juan, I'm researching about this theory of education. Do you have any word that supports this? And the education degree gave me that ability to research for actually studies that prove that something that you will apply with students that have limited resources will actually work. And you're not just implementing an idea because it sounds cool, and that's it. So like it definitely, the business degree gave me the managing and leadership skills. The education degree gave me the technical and academic knowledge that I needed to be in education.
Thank you. So Jennifer, there's a follow-up question for the two of us, and I'm not sure I'll have an exact answer, but hopefully some new information for everyone. Anna is wondering, what makes up the bigger cohort? Those that are applying for joint and dual degrees when they are first applying, or those that are applying in their first year of the program? I don't actually know. I suspect that both groups are actually pretty large. I tend to only see the ones that are applying, and then Jennifer is the one who sees them during their first year in the MBA program. So the number I don't think is necessarily as important as a resource that the MBA program provides for students who may not have been aware or quite sure they wanted to do a joint degree when they were first applying, but do become curious or more interested as time goes on. So Jennifer, do you still host some of those information sessions during the first year of the program, and could you speak to those?
I would say at least this year, there were probably slightly more students that applied in their first year of the MBA program than applied while they applied to the MBA. A lot of this is because of what Christine just said, is a lot of students aren't aware that there are joint degree programs when they're applying for the MBA, or they might be aware and don't know which one is best for their interests and their career aspirations. So that's really the biggest reason why we get students applying in their first year of the MBA. In the fall quarter, we hold information sessions with the Graduate School of Education about the MA MBA program. We also hold information sessions jointly with EIPR to talk about the MS and environment resources. And then the public policy program also holds their own information session. Those are the biggest joint degree programs we have. So those are the information sessions that we formally hold. And any other degrees that students are interested in exploring, I usually will meet one-on-one with students about those, just to talk about, what the process might be, what the timing is going to be, and if it is indeed the right fit for their interests.
Great, thanks, Jennifer. I know Harvard Kennedy School has sometimes done information sessions with us in the past, and I know that we also will try to participate with the medical school on Stanford's campus to host an information session there at least once a year as well. All right, so turning things back over to our alumni. Jacob is wondering, could you quickly talk about, and I'm sure it's not so easy to be quick about this, what sets Stanford apart? What are some of the most valuable skills or resources that you gained from your time in the program?
I can answer this quickly, the people. I think Stanford has the ability to select the most amazing human beings that I have met in my life. And like, honestly, even till this date, some of my best friends are from Stanford. And this network is so intimate and so strong. Anytime I have had a need, they're there to help. I actually spent 14 years outside of Mexico before returning to work at Teach for Mexico. And my classmates and people, alumni, really welcomed me and opened the doors and introduced me to everybody that I needed to meet here in Mexico City and other parts of Mexico. So I will say the people definitely sets Stanford apart.
Yeah, I think it actually is a pretty quick answer. I think you'll hear that from a lot of people, and that was my answer as well. I'd also add the flexibility. You're not going to find a place where you have more options and it's more flexible to do what you want in this dual degree, joint degree program options. That's sort of case in point. It's a lot of ways you can create your own experience at Stanford, and all of us on this call did that and really got creative with it. And there's even more you can do depending on what you want to explore, and that's a real privilege that you won't find everywhere else.
Yeah, it's hard to add to that. The community is so amazing, and like even a few years out, it continues to be amazing. It's really incredible. And not just like on a professional, like on a deeply personal level. It's a really great group of people. They do a great job picking them, and I think what David said is also right. Like the ability to chart your own course, and yet to access the top of the line resources in whatever direction you decide to head, and like just the fact that it's both, like, I think GSB is really differentiated by some of the soft skills offerings. It has like touchy-feely and art of self-coaching, and yet you're also getting like top of the line, like STEM opportunities. So I think that marriage is pretty unique.
Yeah, and the size and location and all of that plays into it. I think all of that would be true no matter where Stanford was located, but there's a very just interactive community feeling to walking around the campus. Last year I wasn't there, so I can't speak to that, but I think going forward, it's just a great place to just really grow close to people.
Well, speaking of some of the things that are unique that you find on the Stanford campus, Laura had some questions about the social enterprise or social innovation and entrepreneurship resources on campus. So I'm curious if any of you were active with the Center for Social Innovation or the Center for Entrepreneurial Studies, or maybe participated in some of the activities that they sponsored that you could speak to.
I was very involved with the Social Innovation Club, and definitely they have many courses, but even like the regular business courses allow you to apply the ideas to a social problem. So I took a Startup Garage, the 2 quarters, and we have many teammates actually trying to create ideas based on social problems. And also the Social Innovation Club is a very active club. They meet frequently, they bring great speakers. And actually, if you have a great idea and you're ready to kick it off, they have a prize that I believe, I don't know if they have increased the amount, it's about $150K USD. If you want to start your own idea, 1 student each year gets it. So like there are many resources to support the social aspect. And even if you work in nonprofit, I also would like to share this. If you go to the GSB and if you have loans and if you go into the nonprofit sector, the GSB helps you pay your loans. So there is no excuse for you to say that you're not going to the nonprofit world, because you have a loan, the GSB is ready to support you. And as this, there are many resources. This summer, actually, I did Education Pioneers. And since I was making less than my classmates, the GSB gave me a stipend to be able to do Education Pioneers. So like there are many, many resources. So it is definitely a place to go if you want to do social entrepreneurship or social innovation.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have anything else to add? That was pretty comprehensive. You took full advantage while you were here. Excellent. Well, maybe for Ida and David then, curious if you could each share a favorite academic experience. Maybe it was a professor or a class itself or a class project, something that you still reflect on and remember fondly a few years out.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to start. So, well, I actually have three that I'll share. I'm sorry, there were actually so many things, but I think they illustrate like different components of the experience. And you know what I'm about to say is going to have something to do with climate, but Stanford Climate Ventures is this incredible interdisciplinary class. It's kind of, there's like Stanford Startup Garage, and there's a couple of sort of Stanford GSB courses that are like a startup incubator, but packaged as a course. And then there's a few variants on that are specific to certain like areas of application. And so Stanford Climate Ventures is kind of the climate version of that, but it's taught by this great guy, Dave Danielson, who's actually managing director at like Bill Gates's, multi-billion-dollar energy fund, which is quite an exceptional thing. He's teaching like a 25-person class and you get to talk to him a couple times a week. And that was just an incredible experience. He brings in just so many industry luminaries, so many interesting people, and like just the connections that have like engendered through that class, but also just the experience of like working through building a business and co-creating that with these sort of industry experts was so unique. So that was a favorite one. I encourage anyone who like winds up going to GSB to take one of these courses where I didn't wind up becoming an entrepreneur, at least not yet. But I like just having that experience at Stanford is really terrific to like meet investors and practice pitching and sort of ideating on something. The second class, my favorite of like this, there's many great sort of soft skills classes at GSB, but I loved Art of Self-Coaching with Ed Batista. He actually has like a really great website with like all these online resources, but it's just like, it's such an intensely philosophical, but also applied class. Like you learn how to sort of self-regulate and how to like understand your relationships with people and how you connect with others and sort of problem solve on your own, but also be a guide to others. And it's just like, was kind of life-changing actually. So I loved that. And then my third thing, and this is like another thing I always encourage people to do, is to do independent studies. So I did 2, but you can do several. And I forget, someone on this call will know how many you can do to meet your course requirements. I did one towards my MBA and then one also towards my Master's of Science degree. And it just is such a good way to work with a professor that you admire, whose work you like, and just get a lot of like one-on-one time with them. And then also have an excuse to use that towards like some other end. So in my case, like one time I was kind of like considering a company concept around something. I just got to work with the professor the whole quarter on that and talked to a bunch of interesting people. The other example, I like was interested in this like idea around like catastrophe insurance, and it actually turned into like a summer internship. So it's just a really great way to further customize your experience.
Yeah, we could spend all day talking about cool classes at GSB. Look, there are some classes I think about every single day that are the bread and butter of what I do at my job, like accounting, financial modeling. I knew basically nothing when I came to the GSB. I didn't know anything, but if you want to manage a business, you kind of need to know that stuff. And I've been shocked at how useful it is. Maybe I shouldn't be, but it really is stuff that I use literally every day. And then there's the soft skills things that maybe if I don't use it every day, do I think about it once a week? Yeah, actually. And that's pretty powerful. You'll hear this from a lot of people. Touchy-feely, a phenomenal course that it isn't just about what you say in business environments, but how you say it, how you connect with others, both professionally, but also personally in your personal relationships, which has been, I think, pretty powerful. And then there's the fun classes. I got to take a class with Tyra Banks, all about personal brand. It was incredible. We did a TV segment with Tyra. We went shopping. We did all of these things. It took a wine class. There's some fun classes, that have real lessons in them. Again, do I think about those every day of my job? No, but I do think about them fairly frequently because they have really tangible things you can take away from them. And it's also an incredible lifetime experience as well.
Juan, I don't want you to feel left out. I'm having such fun hearing these stories. Are there any favorite classes or academic experiences for you?
Definitely one that I have applied the most right now is managing growing enterprises. It's a class based just on cases of things that you never thought that you will be leading, like breakouts between your board and the co-founders, or like facing the PR, like a press problem. And like out of the 15 cases that I read, there have been 3 to 5 cases in Teach for Mexico already that I have faced. And I have actually, I'm a holder of my cases. So I still have those cases and I go back to see what were the best things to do. And definitely it's a class that I recommend. I didn't realize that it was gonna be my favorite until I started working at Teach for Mexico. And I was like, oh my God, let me read that case because I'm living through that right now.
Amazing. So Jennifer, 2 quick questions for you. One, wondering if you have the answer to what Ida mentioned. Do we know how many independent studies a student can pursue during their time in the program?
Yes, so it's a unit limitation. You can count 4 units of independent study towards your MBA. So what that means is you could do 1 unit 4 times. So for a year, 1 unit, or you could do them all at once. It just depends on how in-depth your project is going to be as far as how long you want it to take. And then in joint degree programs, those programs also allow independent study in their discipline. So you could actually do more than the 4 if you're doing a joint degree.
Thank you, Jennifer. One more question for you. A question came up from Julia, was wondering that on our website, we have a list of sort of approved formal joint degree programs at Stanford, but she's wondering why there might be some there and not others. So we have an electrical engineering joint degree, but we don't have one, say, in mechanical engineering. So this is a good time to mention to folks that you can actually customize a dual degree during your time at Stanford. Can you speak a little bit to that process?
Sure. So the joint degrees that are currently approved have, they've been formally approved by the Faculty Senate at Stanford, and they are on the list because those departments and programs had an interest in joining up with the GSB to offer a joint degree. But as Christine mentioned, if you are interested in a graduate degree that is not on that list, so something like mechanical engineering, you are welcome to apply to that. It'll be an independent application process to that department through their own application process. And if admitted, you would be considered a dual degree. So it's a little bit different. I'm not getting into the weeds on it right now, but you are able to do that. And it's very much set up individually. So we would just be talking one-on-one about what those requirements would be and what they mean for your MBA.
Great, thank you, Jennifer. Well, we've covered a lot of information today, and I know we're coming up on time, but of course, one of, I think, the greatest values in time with alumni is really getting to hear about your personal experiences. So as we're preparing to wrap up today, I would love if you could each take a moment to reflect on maybe one of your favorite extracurricular activities or experiences you had as a student at the GSB that was most memorable or meaningful to you.
For me, it's talk. The tradition of, I don't know if any of you know, but I'll explain quickly. Talk is a tradition that in my class, it was every Monday, 2 students from the class volunteer to give a story, and most of the times tend to be a personal story, and is in 30 minutes, you decide what you want to tell your classmates. And in my case, I suffer of the imposter syndrome. When I got to the GSB, I always wonder, why am I the one to go there? And so TAG gave me the space to give people that story or what made me unique. And it was amazing to have 200 classmates just interested on listening who you are. And vice versa. I also went almost every Monday to hear the stories of my classmates, and you get to meet that behind these amazing, talented individuals, there is these very human stories that makes them like amazing. Like that's what I've said. The people at the GSB, I'm like always like I will be in the classroom and be like, what is behind that person? And tag gave me that ability to hear. Like I probably heard over 200 tag, because even at the end of the school year they do like a whole day of tag stories. So like I definitely recommend you, if you get to go to the GSB, to go to a tag or give a talk.
For me, I think one of the most memorable things was actually having the chance to co-found this conference called the Stanford Climate Business and Innovation Conference, which I started with 3 other classmates. And it was just this amazing thing. I know we've talked about people a lot, but just the process of putting the conference together, like with this cohort of like-minded students, and the fact that it's actually, the conference is like continued on, like it still exists and sort of gets passed down. And so there's kind of this like lineage now that I've like gotten to know, which is terrific. But it was a lot of fun. It was like, you know, it was both this like intellectual convening around, you know, a topic that we all really cared about. It was also kind of a party. So it was like the best of both worlds. And then on top of that, just like the ability to meet all these new people through the event. It's actually, I know I said this earlier, but I still talk to people who I met like in industry through that conference. Like even 2 weeks ago, someone like referenced something I'd done at the conference. And I was like, that's like in 2018. But that was just a really memorable sort of project and challenge for us to put on, and has meant a lot.
Yeah, I'll second talk. Totally transformational experience. You won't find anything like that anywhere else. But other extracurriculars are great. One of the biggest ones is the GSB show, which I was very involved with. Incredible, just coming together of GSB students to put a lot of time into a project together, which is a big musical at the end of the year that's newly written every year. And just one of those fun, quirky things that everyone kind of puts their hands together and has a lot of fun doing. And some of my best friends still, the people I talk to still multiple times a week, we did that together. And then one last thing I'll say, some of the most memorable experiences were on the international experiences, either the official ones or the unofficial ones. Both are incredible in different ways. But through the sort of official ones, getting to like learn and travel with professors, and it just incredible experience. I went to Ethiopia and Tanzania, and that was incredible. But also did a student-led one to India. Had never been to India. They were from there and sort of showed us around, and it really incredible experience, trip of a lifetime. And there are a lot of experiences like that at the GSB.
Well, thank you all so much for taking the time to share your experiences with us today. We really appreciate it. Jennifer, as we wrap up today, do you have any advice as one of the advisors to our students, for students that are thinking about pursuing a joint or dual degree, anything for them to maybe walk away and keep in mind as they are considering applying when it comes to how they should focus their time and their academics?
Well, that's a tough question. You're making me end it. Oh my gosh. I think my best advice is be thoughtful about this. It's an investment in time, of course, but it's really important to always kind of take a step back. Why are you applying for the MBA? Ask yourself the same exact question. Why are you applying for the joint degree? And really, really think about what that answer is. What do you want to get out of it? What skills are you hoping to learn? What content are you hoping to learn? How will this help you in your career path and your ultimate goals after you're done at the GSB? That's the kind of broadest, best advice I can offer, is to really, really think about this. Is it something you really want to do? Is it something you feel you need to do? Joint degrees are, as I said, it's not a simple just add on a degree. It's an investment in time, it's an investment of your brain waves, all of that stuff. And, I just want joint degree students to be very invested in what they are pursuing, instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I'm not done yet. When am I going to be done? You don't ever want to feel that way about a graduate program. You want to be excited about it until the very last day of the very last class.
Well, I couldn't think of a better way to wrap things up. And I can certainly say that students at Stanford, I think, do show up for class excited every single day about the opportunities and experiences that they have. So thank you again, everyone, for joining us. We've popped up one last poll. We'd love to hear your thoughts on how things went today. Hopefully we did our best to answer your questions. And I'm just going to share my screen real quick. For one additional resource that we can point you all to at this point in time. We'd love for you to continue to stay engaged with Stanford, continue to learn more about the program. So I'd like to direct you to mystanford.nba. You can actually customize this page for yourself. You can take a short quiz and we can actually keep in touch and let you know about upcoming events and activities that are related to the things that you're interested in. So again, a huge thank you to my panelists. It was lovely to see all of you. It's hard to believe how many years it's been since we've seen you on campus. Jennifer, thank you for your time and for your wisdom. And thanks, everyone. We hope to see your applications in the near future. Thank you and have a great day.